New polling finds 71% of voters want to see third-party independent candidates in presidential debates this cycle. Of course, the chances of that happening are very unlikely at this point, as 1 month out from the first presidential debate between President Biden and former President Trump, it does not look like it's going to happen. It has not stopped RFK Jr., however, who's been left out of the debates, from trying to get in. He tweeted, quote, "X is where the debate should be, the new public square with 100 times the audience of CNN. Real Donald Trump, I know you've got the guts to do it. Do you want to call POTUS or should I?" And while Elon said he'd host the debate, no reply yet from Trump, who previously said he wouldn't debate RFK Jr. or Biden. In another tweet, RFK wrote, quote, "Americans need to know that their president is not afraid to meet a challenge." The Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro said it's incredible RFK Jr. was not invited.
They want it to be just the two candidates and the moderator. They don't want Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or any other independent or third-party candidates included, which is kind of incredible considering that RFK Jr. is polling in the double digits. And by any normal stretch of the imagination, he probably should be included in a debate between the two lead candidates. You got a third-party candidate who's earning upwards of 15% in many of the national polls. That person should be included in such a debate.
And in other debate news, journalist Katie Couric is getting nervous for Biden, explaining that the stakes will be extra high for him since he's done so little press thus far.
All of his legal woes and the fact that, he's on trial, and Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen, he seems to be surprisingly gaining momentum, not losing it. What is your view?
Well, I think that the debates coming in June is an acknowledgement that Joe Biden and his campaign know that they're losing.
Right.
That there's this feeling that they need to shake up the race and they need to do it now. And that they're aware that this narrative exists, that Joe Biden is old and weak and out of control. And if you put him on a stage next to Trump, he has the opportunity to disprove that. But that's also a risk because he has the opportunity to prove that, too.
Right. The stakes are high.
Yeah.
He hasn't done many interviews. They've been very selective, doing things like Conan O'Brien or
Howard Stern.
Or Smartless,
Yeah.
right? And things like that I think aren't necessarily a forum for really challenging questions about policy and his vision for the future. And I think it would behoove him to get out there more, to talk more, because I think the less you talk, the higher the stakes are when you do. Mm-hmm. And so I think you're right. The debate is going to be a really important test for both candidates. And I do, I've been trying to get an interview with him. So selfishly, I'd like him to be.
He needs more interviews.
No, he does,
No,
though.
he does,
I really think so, because I think it only reinforces this notion that he is not up to the job.
Look, Katie Couric is right there. Maybe it took Democrats a little long to get to this point where they're acknowledging these truths about Joe Biden. And I do kind of bristle a little at the idea that it's a narrative that he's old and weak. But even the other commentator there did acknowledge that there's a real risk that Joe Biden will confirm that narrative about him were he to actually debate Donald Trump. And that is the big problem, because this idea that Joe Biden is a weak candidate for a number of reasons, including his age, is not something new. The man has been the age he's been for the
Older
entire
every year.
time, exactly. And I think it does what they're not saying. I appreciate this conversation that they're having and the kind of self-awareness that they're demonstrating, but what they're not saying is that there were opportunities earlier than this to have a different candidate. There was an opportunity, given how high his unfavorable ratings have been, to at least have a primary. As unorthodox as it is for an incumbent to sit for a primary, it's also unorthodox for an incumbent to have numbers that are as bad as Joe Biden's numbers have been for well over a year now.
Right, and to have an incumbent that is this old.
Yeah.
It was an unprecedented situation anyway, so the idea that you would do nothing to vet him for a second term is a choice that is blowing up in the Democratic Party's face as he looks so far behind in so many of these key battleground states. Mm-hmm. I thought that poll that the overwhelming majority of Americans, 71%, would like to hear from a third-party candidate, an independent candidate in the debate as well, is so, the American people are telling us what they want, that they are not satisfied with the options before them. There are other options, and they want to hear more about them. Donald Trump and Joe Biden don't, Trump doesn't talk about policy a lot. He talks a lot. He doesn't talk about what he thinks about policy, what his vision for America is. He leaves it to you to fill in the blanks and hopes that that's going to be enough to carry him over the finish line. And then Biden doesn't do adversarial interviews at all.
He won't even talk to Katie Couric.
He won't even talk to Katie Couric. RFK Jr. does podcasts at great length. He talks for hours and hours and hours in incredible detail about what he thinks on various issues. He's made himself more accessible. So I agree with him. Yes, in some level, obviously Twitter has a bigger audience than the failing, declining mainstream media, mainstream news. I think he should be included in the CNN debate or whatever debates are held there. There are Americans who still primarily get their news from those formats, from watching TV, from kind of traditional debates. I think it would also be great to have a debate on X or on social media, but that does not excuse the networks for not including alternate perspectives.
Yeah, I do think the RFK Jr. Elon Musk exchange is an interesting one. RFK first tweeted at Elon Musk saying, will you host a debate? Basically, Elon Musk says, yes, I'm open to that. And then RFK Jr. pivots to kind of tagging in Donald Trump saying, well, will you agree to submit to this kind of a context? And the incentives for Trump are the same as the incentives for Biden to not want to open the door to this sort of a thing. Obviously, they're protecting their status as having the establishment lane to run on and being able to take advantage of these cable news debates if they want to. They have a lot to lose and not a lot to gain, unlike RFK Jr., where the upside is everywhere. It's nothing but upside. But I also do think it's a little hypocritical because at one point RFK Jr. was talking about all of the third-party candidates being shut out and not being allowed to have debates. I know that Jill Stein has followed up to some of these RFK Jr. debate tweets saying, okay, well, how about we have a third-party debate? You said that this was something that's important, but it does seem like everybody wants to pull the ladder up behind them. RFK Jr. is the highest polling of the third-party candidates, so he wants it to be him and the big boys club. And it does kind of beg the question, well, if he were the Donald Trump or Joe Biden in the situation, would he be open to third-party candidates challenging him? Or is everybody just sort of preserving a little bit of power that they have as opposed to standing on a real ideological commitment?
Sure, there should be a third-party debate as well. We'll host a third-party debate. Third-party candidates, you're welcome, and we'll have a debate.
Yeah.
So it is telling. So RFK Jr. has insisted that he will meet the qualifications to be included in that upcoming debate. But I don't think that's going to matter because they have the network. They've explicitly promised Trump and Biden that it will be just them. So now I think if he clearly and obviously meets the requirements and they still shun him, that will be an opportunity for him to further embarrass the network and the other candidates for not including him. But as far as I can tell, he is not going to be in that debate, regardless of how good his poll numbers are.
Yeah, I do know that. I don't want to misspeak, but I believe I remember Marianne Williamson and perhaps some of the other candidates back in 2020 talking about rule changes that they believe were designed to exclude them from the debates. Marianne Williamson was the most Googled person after one of the debates, and that was the last time she was on the debate stage. The rules are kind of specific and ephemeral.
And these aren't even rules because the debate commission had actual rules,
right.
And they're bucking the debate commission. They said no.
Poll averages or how much money spent. There's like a bunch of different factors that you combine in different ways to qualify, and those can be manipulated to exclude people if you want. And now, to take your point, we don't even have that to have some kind of universal metric to go on. So yeah, it's tough. I think the 71% of Americans saying that they want a third party is a really important opportunity for people who want to invest in third parties as well. Because there have been times in American political history where that level of interest hasn't been there, and the argument for why people should pay attention to alternative parties hasn't been that great. I think that RFK Jr., regardless of whether you kind of agree with him politically, is opening up the door to a lot of opportunities to say, let's invest in a permanent party infrastructure. I do regret the fact, I think it's frustrating that he is not associated with a party, that whatever gains that he makes in this cycle are going to be all for naught if he loses. I feel the same way about Cornel West. I think it was very exciting when he was running with the Green Party and had the potential to grow the Green Party into a more permanent apparatus that can do a little bit better each year going forward. And I think that's why Jill Stein is getting more attention now, because at very least it feels like it's not pouring water into a bucket with holes in the bottom to invest in her campaign, because it's not just the campaign, it's more of a movement. But I do hope that people who feel this way, the 71% who want a third-party candidate in this race, consider that they should hold on to that desire after RFK Jr., after Jill Stein, after Cornel West, and say that if you really want to build third-party power, you've got to build third-party power outside of an election season.
More Rising right after this.